A steel roller the size of a telephone pole spins at hundreds of RPM. Golden wheat kernels pour into the gap between two massive cylinders. They shatter on contact. Pieces explode into dust so fine it hangs in the air like fog. This is where Wonder Bread begins. And what happens to these kernels over the next few minutes is genuinely bizarre. The factory destroys the most nutritious parts of the grain on purpose. Then, in a completely separate step, it adds nutrients back in. Synthetic ones, but we'll get there. Massive trucks back into loading docks hauling tons of hard red winter wheat. Each trailer tilts upward on hydraulic lifts. Wheat cascades out the back into a graded pit below. One single truckload carries enough wheat for 40,000 loaves. Just one truck. The kernels fall into underground conveyors heading for the cleaning house. Vibrating screens shake the grain over mesh panels of different sizes. Rocks, sticks, dirt, even the occasional insect. All that gets caught. Then the kernels roll through a magnetic separator. Tiny metal fragments from harvesting equipment get yanked out instantly. After that, a destoner uses air currents and gravity to separate anything heavier than wheat. You'd be surprised what turns up in there. Small pebbles that look identical to kernels. The machines catch them by weight alone. Pretty clever engineering. Once clean, the wheat moves into tempering bins. Workers add water to the kernels in precise amounts. The goal is to toughen the outer bran while softening the starchy center inside. Think of soaking a walnut before you crack it open. The shell peels off easier when the inside loosens up. Wheat sits in these bins for 12 to 24 hours. Nothing exciting to watch, just kernels absorbing moisture in total darkness. But skip this step and everything downstream falls apart. The tempered wheat rides a bucket elevator several stories up. Welcome to the roller mill floor. This is where things get violent. The first set of rollers are called brake rolls. They're corrugated with tiny ridges, like a metal washboard. Wheat passes between them and gets ripped apart. Not ground, ripped. The outer bran cracks off and flakes. The germ, that tiny embryo packed with nutrients, gets flattened and shoved to the side. What's left behind is the endosperm, the pure white starchy center, and only the starchy center. Here's where this gets wild. That endosperm is only about 75% of the kernel. The other 25%, bran and germ, holds almost all the natural vitamins. The B vitamins, the iron, the fiber, the vitamin E. All of it just got separated out and sent to a different bin. Gone. The endosperm chunks now travel through reduction rolls. These are smooth steel cylinders pressed tightly together. Each pass crushes the pieces finer. Between each roller, sifters shake the flour through silk screens. Coarse bits loop back for another pass. The finest powder drops through. This cycle repeats 5, 6, sometimes 7 times. By the end, you're touching flour so fine it feels like talcum powder. Pure white, almost weightless in the air, and stripped of nearly every nutrient the wheat once had. What's left is basically starch and gluten protein. That's it. Could you bake bread with this flour right now? Sure, but it would be one of the least nutritious grain products you could eat. So the factory does something remarkable, and this is the step that changes everything. In a separate section of the mill sits a machine most people never see. It's called a micro-ingredient feeder. Picture a stainless steel hopper mounted above the river of flowing flour. Inside that hopper sits a pre-mixed blend of synthetic vitamins and minerals: thiamine mononitrate, riboflavin, niacin, reduced iron, folic acid. None of these came from wheat. They arrived at this factory as concentrated powders packed in sealed drums. A screw auger sits coiled inside the feeder like a corkscrew. It turns at an exact calibrated speed. It meters out the vitamin powder into the flour stream below. We're talking grams per minute, not handfuls, grams. The precision here is surgical. Too much vitamin blend and the finished bread picks up a metallic aftertaste. Too little and the nutritional numbers printed on the bag won't be accurate. There is zero room for error. Watch what happens next. The synthetic vitamin powder drops from the auger into the moving flour stream. Immediately, a ribbon blender kicks in. It's a long trough with a helical blade spinning inside. The blade folds the flour over and over on itself. It tumbles, lifts, and recombines the powder hundreds of times. The goal is total uniformity. Every single handful of enriched flour must carry the exact same vitamin dose. Not roughly the same, exactly the same. Workers pull samples from the stream throughout the day. Each sample gets tested on the spot. If the vitamin readings drift even slightly off target, the auger speed gets recalibrated immediately. Sometimes the entire line pauses until the numbers come back in range. That's how tight the tolerances are. Now, stop and think about what just happened in this building. The mill spent massive energy running wheat through break rolls and reduction rolls. It methodically stripped away the bran and the germ. Those were the parts that naturally contained B vitamins, iron, and folic acid. They removed them completely. Then, in this separate machine just down the hall, lab-made copies of those exact same nutrients got measured and injected right back into the flour. The result is called enriched flour. Not whole wheat, not natural, enriched. That word tells you the whole story. The flour had to be made nutritionally empty first. Then it got rebuilt with synthetic substitutes. Every single loaf of Wonder Bread starts right here. Flour that was destroyed and then reconstructed. That is wild. The enriched flour now gets blown through pneumatic pipes into massive storage silos. Time to make bread. Industrial mixers the size of bathtubs receive precise doses of everything. Flour, water, yeast, sugar, salt, soybean oil, dough conditioners. The mixing arms inside are thick as your forearm. They knead with enormous force. In minutes, the dough comes together, a pale, elastic mass that stretches without tearing. Pull a piece thin and you can see light pass through it. That means the gluten network is fully formed. The dough is ready. It drops onto a conveyor and enters a bulk fermentation chamber. Warm, humid, almost tropical in there. Yeast feeds on sugar and pumps out carbon dioxide. The dough swells and swells. In roughly an hour, it nearly doubles in size. Here's a number that puts the scale in perspective. One mixer batch produces enough dough for over 1,000 loaves. This factory runs several batches every single hour. Thousands of loaves before lunch. After fermentation, the dough hits a divider. This machine cuts the swollen mass into portions by weight. Each chunk will become exactly one loaf. The rough pieces tumble into a rounder. It's a cone-shaped machine with a spiral track inside. Each piece rolls along the track and comes out as a smooth ball. Then they rest briefly on a moving belt. The gluten needs a few minutes to relax before shaping. Now they enter the molder. Rollers flatten each one into a thin oval sheet. That sheet gets curled up tightly, like rolling a sleeping bag. That layered, even sheets of dough you see when you tear a slice of Wonder Bread apart. That soft, pull-apart texture starts right here at this machine. The rolled dough drops into greased metal pans riding a conveyor. The pans glide into the final proof box. It feels like a walk-in sauna in there. Warm, humid air wraps around every pan. The dough rises one last time. It fills the pan almost to the brim. This takes about an hour. The yeast give one final push of carbon dioxide. The loaf swells into that iconic domed shape you recognize on the shelf. Then the pans enter the tunnel oven. This thing stretches nearly 100 feet long. Pans roll in one end and emerge from the other about 20 minutes later. Inside, temperatures exceed 400 degrees. The crust sets first and turns golden brown. Interior starch is gelatinized, locking in that impossibly soft, spongy texture. The smell on the factory floor hits you before you even see the bread. Sweet, warm, toasted grain. It fills the entire building. You can taste it in the air. Hot loaves get flipped out of their pans onto a cooling conveyor. You cannot bag hot bread. Trapped steam would condense and turn the loaf soggy within hours, so the loaves ride through a cooling tower. It's a tall, spiraling conveyor, carrying them upward and back down. The ride takes about 2 hours. By the time they reach the bottom, they're room temperature and ready. Next comes slicing. Each cooled loaf passes through a band slicer. Dozens of thin, parallel blades vibrate at high speed inside a metal frame. One loaf enters. A fraction of a second later, perfectly uniform slices emerge on the other side. Every single slice is the exact same thickness, about half an inch. Stack 10 loaves together and the slices line up perfectly. That kind of precision doesn't happen by accident. Right after slicing, the loaf enters the bagging machine. A printed polka-dot bag opens on its own. The sliced loaf slides in. A clip seals the end. 2 seconds. A date stamp hits the tag. That's a finished loaf of Wonder Bread. But not every loaf ships out. Quality control pulls random samples each shift. Workers squeeze the bread to check softness, they weigh it, they measure slices with calipers, they hold the crust up against a printed color reference card. If anything drifts off target, oven temperatures and mix ratios get adjusted in real time. Some lines run cameras that scan every single loaf on the belt. Anything misshapen, torn, or underweight gets kicked off the conveyor automatically. No human needed. Approved loaves get stacked into plastic trays on rolling racks. Those racks roll straight into delivery trucks at the loading dock. A single Wonder Bread bakery can push over 1 million loaves out the door every week. Some Some plants run around the clock 7 days a week. The line never stops. From raw kernel to bagged loaf, the whole journey takes under 24 hours. Next time you hold that soft white loaf in the polka-dot bag, you know exactly what happened inside the building that made it. What surprised you more, that every natural vitamin gets stripped out or that synthetic copies get injected right back in? Drop it in the comments. And if this blew your mind, hit subscribe.